We are up on YouTube. We're all set and ready to go.
Hey,
Rob.
Richard, go for it.
Thank you, Rob. Let's call the meeting to order. Richard Stevens, currently chair of the board. Welcome to the January meeting of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill Board of Trustees. Glad each of you is able to join us remotely, and I sure hope in person for our next meeting for this important gathering in the life of our university. Let's start with a few logistics. Board members, if you would, please mute your microphone unless you're speaking. Also, when you begin speaking or you make a motion or a second to a motion, if you would, please identify yourself for the record. Just as a reminder, under recently enacted amendments to the North Carolina General Statutes concerning virtual meetings by public bodies, all votes will be by roll call. Additionally, just a reminder again, all chats, instant messages, text, or other written communication between board members regarding the transaction of the public business during this remote meeting are deemed to be a public record. Secretary Teresa Artis Neal, will you now call the roll?
Yes, Ms. Artis Neal here. Mr. Bullock.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Kobe.
Here.
Mr. Cochran.
Here.
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Duckett.
Here.
Mrs. Hopkins.
Here.
Mr. McCullen.
Present.
Mr. Meekins.
Here.
Mr. Pryor.
Here.
And Mr. Stevens.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. As chair of the Board of Trustees, it's my responsibility to remind all members of the board of their duty under the State Government Ethics Act to avoid conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict of interest as required by this act. Each member has received the agenda and related information for this Board of Trustees meeting. If any board member knows of any conflict of interest or appearance of conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before this board today, the conflict or appearance of conflict should be identified at this time. Hearing none, we will proceed. Having already read the materials listed under the consent agenda, is there any item that needs to be moved to the discussion portion of either the open or the closed session agenda? Just as a reminder, those items are the minutes of the November 12th meeting and the proposed revised 2021 meeting dates for the board. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve all the items on the consent agenda.
So moved. Davis.
Motion by Davis. Is there a second?
Second by Cochran.
Second by Cochran. Secretary Artis Neal, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Artis Neal, yes. Mr. Bullock.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kobe.
Yes.
Mr. Cochran.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Duckett.
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins.
Yes.
Mr. McCullen.
Yes.
Mr. Meekins.
Yes.
Mr. Mosley.
Yes.
Mr. Pryor.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes. Consent agenda stands approved. And I want to welcome our liaison from the UNC Board of Governors, Governor David Powers. And he's been with us for every single of our meetings since he became our liaison. David, we're glad you're able to join us today. We look forward to continuing our important work together in support of higher education in our state. Would you like to share a few thoughts with us?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things that we've got coming up. You all know we're involved in governance committee, particularly with our trustee selection process, which we will spend a good portion of our upcoming meeting discussing in February. Our committee is scheduled to vote in April. So we'll be having continuing conversations on this as we go along. Each of the committee members is liaison to a certain number of schools, and as I am with UNC-Chapel Hill, UNC Pembroke, and Elizabeth City State University. So we'll all be having our conversations and ready to move forward with that. we're also going to have a second in our series of presentations on free speech on campus. And we are finalizing the details, but we hope to have 2 students and 2 chancellors to join us at our governance committee meeting in February, and to talk about the state of free speech on their respective campuses. And then we'll have time for question and answer when they're done. As y'all know, that 3 professors at Chapel Hill that had done some research on free speech on campus at UNC-Chapel Hill joined us for our first session, and got us kicked off in good fashion. And we are going to take the research they did and do a similar type survey system-wide. So you guys set the tone for us there. We really appreciate that, and got us kicked off in good fashion. Not a whole lot else that we've got going on right now. Obviously, there's a lot. We're going through tuition time right now, and beginning of the legislative session. So we're beginning to work our joint legislative agenda. It's going to be a busy session this year. I was down there yesterday, and it's going to be busy. But we do have new higher ed chairs in both bodies. John Hardister from Greensboro is the House Higher Ed Chair, and Michael Lee from Wilmington is the Senate Higher Ed Chair. Both, I think, strong supporters of the university system, really good guys to work with, both of them. So I look forward to doing what I can to work on the university agenda items with them as we go forward. And I just have to leave you, as I have seemed like every time I've been together with you, saying a big thanks. We have somehow managed to get through as trying a time as I can imagine, short of warfare, and continue to provide quality education to our students. And you guys deserve an awful lot of credit for that. And I really, really appreciate the way you've kept to it. And it hasn't been perfect in any stretch of the imagination, but it's been strong. And I think it's done credit to the name of UNC-Chapel Hill and the name of the University of North Carolina system. So I really want to say on behalf of the board, thank you very much for that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stick on to you guys going to a closed session.
Thank you, Governor Powers. Any questions, comments for Governor Powers while he's with us? He stays in frequent contact, great communication underway with him and our board. So thank you for that. Any questions, comments for Governor Powers while he's with us? We look forward to having you back to all of our meetings whenever you're able to, Governor Powers.
I look forward to it.
As chair of the board, I want to welcome our entire university to the spring semester. We know how tough 2020 was for our campus, and we're looking forward to the year ahead with hope and determination. And we appreciate the hard work of so many, as Governor Powers just pointed out, as we begin this semester. Special thank you to our infectious disease experts who are advising our chancellor in planning this spring. To all of our students, faculty, and staff who have participated in the testing program. To our county and state health officials who are working to ensure the safety of everyone and to help distribute the vaccine as it becomes available. And to the chancellor and his leadership team for the countless hours they spent working and planning for this semester. I know I speak for the entire board, Chancellor, when I say that we're so grateful to each member of our community for the sacrifices they've made to preserve our mission of teaching, research, and public service. In the darkest hours of 2020, we did not know when a vaccine might be available to combat this disease. We now know that a vaccine is effective and is becoming available, and that now there's a light at the end of the tunnel. This vaccine represents a tremendous scientific achievement for the world, and Tar Heels played a critical role in this process. Gillings researchers like Ralph Barrick, David Weber, Mike Cohen, Allison Aiello, Tim Sheehan, and many others have worked around the clock to improve our understanding of COVID-19 and to develop treatments for it. Carolina alumni like Kizzy Corbett is a research fellow in the National Institute of Health's Viral Pathogenesis Laboratory, played a critical role in the development of the mRNA 1273 vaccine. We've seen time and time again, Carolina's researchers are leading the way to confront the challenges we face. We thank them most sincerely for their commitment to serving our university, the state, and indeed the world. We're looking forward to our Chancellor's presentation today. We're particularly grateful for his hard work and the work of his team to balance the university's budget. We know this endeavor has not been easy, particularly in the midst of a global pandemic. Yet we wholeheartedly concur with the Chancellor that the crisis we face currently requires a strong financial foundation for the university. We must prepare for whatever lies ahead, and these cost-saving measures will be critical for our future. Chancellor, thank you to you and your entire leadership team for your continued efforts during this difficult time. We appreciate your work to listen to students, faculty, staff, along with alumni, community members, members of this board, and others. And as a board, we look forward to working with you going forward. We also want to congratulate the 25 winners of the 2021 University Teaching Awards. In the midst of a global pandemic, these inspiring teachers adapted and found new ways to teach our students and prepare them for the challenges that lie ahead. On behalf of the board, we want to say thank you to all of our faculty, and particularly these award winners, for this impressive achievement. We also want to welcome to Carolina 2 important new hires. Earlier this month, the Moorhead Cain Foundation announced that Chris Bradford will now serve as its new president, arriving this spring. It's also announced in collaboration with Duke University that the new executive director of the Robertson Scholars Leadership Program will be Andrew Lakis. Congratulations to Chris and Andrew. We wish you both well in these new roles. I want to end with a word of thanks to all the staff who helped make this meeting possible, and we truly appreciate your efforts to make it run smoothly. We'll now call on Reeves Mosley, our student body president, turn it over to him for his remarks. Reeves.
Thank you, Chair Stevens. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all again, and I hope that you have had a great and relaxing holiday season. I'm glad to be back on campus for my last semester and to see the changes that were implemented in the Carolina roadmap to allow students who would like to be here to do so. I would also like to thank Chancellor Guskowitz, Vice Chancellor Johnson, Provost Bluen, university medical experts, and the administration as a whole for the thorough plan for a robust testing program dedicated to keeping the Carolina community safe. I would also like to thank the hundreds of student volunteers dedicating their time to upholding this program and putting others before themselves so that Carolina can maintain its prestigious academic programs throughout this pandemic. I'm optimistic to see vaccine distribution increase in North Carolina over the coming weeks and months, and I'm hopeful for an eventual return back to normal. I'm also honored to be one of the 2 students to sit on the ad hoc building renaming committee with RHA President Kira Griffith. I'm also grateful to work under Vice Chancellor David Ruth on this committee, and these conversations have been incredibly productive, and I'm ecstatic to be part of the process that pushes Carolina forward into the future. With that, the Mosley administration has chosen to place an emphasis on student mental health and campus-wide transparency as we continue to navigate university changes throughout the pandemic. As we move into the spring semester as a student government, we will both start new initiatives and continue to promote successful ones from the fall. Our affordability sector is a great example, as they're devoting their time this semester to continuing food affordability efforts, but will also be launching the Carolina Immersion Fund grant program simultaneously. In an attempt to emphasize mental health awareness across the university, we will attempt to activate mental health conversations with surveys throughout the entire semester. Additionally, we will work with the undergraduate senate and potentially utilize student housing resources to make suicide prevention resources more widely available to students. We will also see great value in publicizing the counseling and psychological services available on campus at this time, while also focusing on the student perspective and the ability of the service to be short-term. The Multicultural Affairs and Diversity Outreach Team have plans in place to host a Black History Month event, host the annual Black Male Leadership Summit, and continue to offer continue to offer implicit bias trainings to ensure that everyone may feel welcome in this organization and on this campus. I also wanted to express my support for the students and student leaders of the campus-wide this past week who were impacted by the vandalism and threats to personal safety that occurred. This hateful attack on the campus-wide provides a stark reminder that, despite the progress made this far, there's still more work that needs to be done to actively support and protect marginalized communities. We, as an entity, must continue to stand up and fight against racism, anti-Semitism, and discrimination wholeheartedly, and student government will be working to support the campus-wide and other student organizations affected by this attack in the coming weeks and months. Finally, as my term as student body president draws to a close, and I give my second to last update to the Board of Trustees, I just want to say what an honor it has been to work with you all this year, regardless of the circumstances we were handed. It has been an extreme pleasure to know and work with each one of you despite the challenges we have faced, and I'm proud of the way that we have navigated them as a body. With that being said, there are many goals in place to be reached throughout the semester, and I'm confident that this administration will make it their priority to accomplish these goals before the transfer of power of the next president occurs in April. That is all from me, and thank you so much.
Please, thank you. You always give us great remarks, and thank you for the job you're doing. And we know it's not been easy ever, but certainly not during the pandemic. I notice whenever you meet with us, you have your home state flag next to you. I promise you at your next meeting, which unfortunately is your last, I'm going to bring you a North Carolina flag from your adopted state. So maybe you'll share that one in the future as well. But thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have one on the right side for our next meeting, but actually hopefully we'll be in person. But for my last meeting, I want to bring something from my home state too for a gift.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Texas steaks were good. Chancellor, let's call on you now for your remarks and also to introduce the program for this meeting.
Great. Thank you, Richard, for your earlier comments, for your leadership of the board, and Reeves, thank you for all that you're doing. And I echo your earlier comments and sentiments about the events of the Campus Y earlier this week. It's great to be back with everyone, and I want to provide you with an update in 3 areas today. Our COVID-19 planning and the way, a little more about the way the semester has gone. I'm going to talk about the budget and some of the many ways in which our community has had an impact and has continued the great work of our university over these past many months. So as you know, we started the semester later than originally scheduled on January 19th, and then with record COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations around the state and across the country, we moved the start of the undergraduate in-person classes to February the 8th. So we're preparing for that here. That'll begin soon. However, many of our graduate classes and research labs have conducted their work in person, and so far things are going very well. We did this, made these adjustments to the academic calendar really to provide as much flexibility as possible for a safe return to campus for all members of the campus community. We know that there's not one solution to try to prevent the virus from spreading. So we've made changes to several key areas using a layered approach to manage it from every way possible. Our Carolina Together testing program, which involves asymptomatic testing, continues to go well, and you're going to hear more here at the end of my comments from Dr. Barzin and Loftus, as does our symptomatic testing at Campus Health. And I want to just acknowledge the hard work of our Campus Health and Student Affairs teams as they have worked tirelessly over the past several months. An important number that I think we want to recognize is 168 positive cases were identified in our prior to arrival testing, which allowed for us to identify those individuals before they would have come back to campus. And I know that Dr. Barzin, I'll say a little bit more about that later. We're now able to identify positive cases and potential clusters much earlier. And so I really want to thank all of those who have been involved in that Carolina Together testing program. And again, you're going to hear a little bit more about it. We've been very clear from the beginning that there would be cases on our campus, and we are prepared to handle them. And we've been doing this for nearly 3 weeks now, and it's, as I said, it's working very well. But we still have a ways to go, and we'll continue our vigilance to be sure that we can keep the campus community safe. And I've been proud of the students in holding up to the COVID-19 community standards that they've all signed an attestation to promise to uphold. And so I also want to thank hundreds of students who have volunteered to help carry out the Carolina Together testing program. The COVID-19 Student Services Corps, led by Meg Zamarodi, one of our faculty in the School of Nursing, has logged over 5,000 hours of volunteer work to help carry out this important work for our campus community. And so we couldn't do this without their effort. And I think it just speaks to the way that at Carolina we all come together in a collaborative way to help solve these problems. Lately, a lot of the attention has been turned to vaccines and vaccine distribution. We are continuing to advocate for our frontline workers here on campus to receive the vaccine in phase 3, and all indications are that they will be included in that phase. Campus Health has recently been approved as a vaccine distribution site for our students once that we've moved into that phase. And so I know that they'll be preparing for that. While they're not obviously distributing vaccine presently, they will have the opportunity to do that hopefully later in this spring semester. UNC Healthcare has also been a distribution site, both over at the hospital, predominantly there for our frontline medical workers, and more recently over the past few weeks at the Friday Center, and that all seems to be going well. So again, I'm just grateful for the work of so many people throughout this planning. I also, I want to acknowledge Provost Bob Bluen, because it was really Bob who, back in October, in leading the roadmap implementation team, that said we probably need to stand up our own COVID testing analysis lab, and I think we can do this in relatively short order. And Bob pulled it off, along with the help of many others around the table, to stand up our own lab. We're no longer using a third-party provider, an outside testing lab. Again, because of Bob's vision for us being able to pull that off. Also, our Campus and Community Advisory Committee has been extremely helpful throughout that planning, and we continue to bring them together to help guide our decision making. So I'm going to shift over to the budget. Nate Knuffman did a very nice job earlier in the finance meeting to sort of lay out sort of where we've been and where we're headed. I want to emphasize again that it's been nearly a decade since we've had a balanced budget at Carolina. And as you've heard us talk about on several occasions when Nate and I have presented this to the board, that we have three major challenges. One is around a historic structural deficit, the second around COVID-related impacts, and then the third around deferred maintenance. And I just want to, again, express my appreciation to Nate and his team for working tirelessly with all the units on campus. I also want to emphasize that at the beginning of this pandemic, we said that every revenue source was threatened here at Carolina. And I just want to say that, this is a challenge of every institution across the country that are faced with these challenges, as well as some of their own structural deficits, just as we're working to rectify. And these two intersect in ways that again, I'm confident that we're going to be able to overcome. We've been working with leaders across campus over the past 10 months to determine how to address these challenges. And as Nate indicated earlier, I've directed our schools and units university-wide to reduce personnel funds by 1.5%. And operating funds by 7.5% for fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 21-22. As you know, we put measures in place through Nate's team and Provost Bluen's efforts back in April to put in place at the start of COVID-19 measures to help try to offset these COVID-related shortfalls, and they are helping to offset some of the 2021 reductions that our schools and unit leaders are working on as we speak. But this will enable us to cure this roughly $100 million structural deficit in central funds by the end of fiscal year 21-22. I've been asked on several occasions, why are we doing this now in the midst of the pandemic? And Bob and I have said repeatedly that we don't know what the future holds, and we must ensure our financial stability given this uncertainty, and it's the responsible thing to do. And again, that deficit was uncovered again 2 years ago, really, as Bob convened a number of university leaders and deans to begin addressing this. So I know the provosts and the deans are engaging their constituencies on these difficult decisions, just as we've consulted with the deans and vice chancellors throughout this lengthy process. It's not going to be easy, but I feel confident that we're going to get through this together, and we're very fortunate, again, while working to balance our budget, that 3 areas remain. We have a lot of positive news around. Our enrollment remains steady. Our research funding for this year is on schedule to match last year's record number. And as David Ruth shared with the board earlier today, our capital campaign remains very strong, as we've just experienced the best December and soon to be January that we've ever experienced. And so a lot of hard work, and people believe in Carolina. And as I said, that will certainly help as we move forward. Despite all the challenges brought on by the pandemic this past year, we're committed to fulfilling our mission of being the leading global public research university. And this has not changed, and I witness every day the ways that our community is changing the world and having an impact. On Carolina Next, we needed to re-examine the strategic initiatives in response to the challenging landscape this year, including what COVID-19 has brought. And the plan has always been that this would be a living, breathing document. And by updating the environmental scans and adjusting it in a strategic way, some of the opportunities that are there will allow us to move forward with confidence in this roadmap. So I appreciate the confidence that the board expressed in that roadmap. Carolina Next back last January. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of when it was launched, and we've made some modifications, but they're ones that are going to really move us forward. Just want to say as I wrap up, a few things just about the great things that are happening here on campus. Last Saturday, I had the opportunity to speak with the UNC Autism Fathers Conference. This was a group of 30 to 40 fathers of children with autism, and who have been connected to our incredible leaders here at UNC in our world-renowned Autism Research Center. That center here crosses 32 university departments, 96 principal investigators with awards for autism research, and we're ranked 4th in the U.S. for funding in autism research. Leading the way in developing personalized interventions to improve the lives of children and adults with autism. And we couldn't be more proud of the work that we're doing here. Dr. Joe Piven, who led that conference with the group of fathers last weekend, and it was very inspiring, the afternoon of talks and conversations, people sharing their own stories. But Dr. Piven is one of those amazing investigators that I've mentioned earlier, and he's the only investigator in the U.S. to lead 3 consecutive NIH Centers of Excellence in Autism Research. And I can tell you, like many here in the local community, that having lived here for 25 years, I often come across people and have several friends who've moved here to the Chapel Hill area specifically to be close to our expert faculty and clinicians in autism. And so we're grateful for all that they do. In other good news, on Monday, I had the opportunity to attend with several faculty and leaders from the Gillings School of Global Public Health to meet with approximately 30 North Carolina legislators to share the incredible work of our Gillings faculty and researchers. And as you know, we like to talk about Gillings as the #1 public school of public health in the country. And the infectious disease program, which intersects beautifully with the Gilling School, was just ranked 11th globally by U.S. News and World Report for their work on COVID. They've done incredible work over the past year on every aspect of COVID and its impact. And you've seen several of them on the local and national news over the past several months. Funding from the North Carolina Policy Collaboratory, I just want to emphasize, has also been critical to a lot of this work in COVID that we've been carrying out. The work by Jeff Warren pulling together, I think over the $29 million that was provided by the General Assembly is now being used as game-changing research across not just UNC, but several of our other system schools, and it's fueling research projects that have had and will continue to have a direct positive impact on the health and safety of North Carolinians and the entire nation. Along those same lines, another highlight that we're really proud of is an initiative called READY. This stands for the Rapidly Emerging Antiviral Drug Discovery Initiative. And this is a multidisciplinary initiative that was launched this past fall. It'll enable us to develop antiviral drugs for epidemic and pandemic viruses with the goal of ensuring that we are prepared to mitigate the impact of future emerging viruses, those that we're not aware of today. I often talk to our faculty about, that we need to think about how we're preparing our students here at Carolina for careers and jobs that don't yet exist. We often joke about the fact that they'll be retiring from their jobs. Our students here will be retiring from their jobs around the year 2070. And so what will be needed in 35, 45 years from now in the way of the career and job market? Well, READY is no different, this project. We must prepare now for the unknown viruses and diseases of the future. And this is going to be an extremely important partnership between UNC-Chapel Hill, government agencies, and private industry partners. And I'm just proud of the work that John Bamforth and Nathan Mormon from our Eshelman Institute for Innovation and many others like Ralph Barrick and the work that they've already done on this initiative. As Shana Hill mentioned earlier, in December, we announced the creation of a new staff advisory committee to the chancellor, and enjoyed meeting with them just yesterday, and had an important conversation around enabling career development. Vice Chancellor Becky Mangini helped lead that conversation, and the importance of retaining our best employees during this critical time is something that I'm really focused on, and I want to make certain that our valued staff know their voices are important in our decision making, and I look forward to our continuing work together. Finally, yesterday, the first wave of Carolina undergraduate applicants got the news that they've been invited to become Tar Heels starting this fall. We had 53,573 applications, setting another record, a 21% increase from last year, and the 15th year of record applications for Carolina. As Trustee Duckett mentioned earlier, people are excited about the opportunities here. And I've talked with the board before about my commitment to try to expand enrollment. We're going to do this in a very modest way and in a responsible way, especially given some of the budgetary constraints, but we remain committed to that. So I'm going to leave you with a few images, and TJ, perhaps if you can share your screen. But I looked out my window and saw students waiting socially distanced to take their first sip. You know, the tradition here at Carolina is taking that first sip at the old well on the first day of classes each semester, and it looked a little different this year. This was the picture out my office window here, and even though the well is unfortunately turned off, they were at least staging those photos, and it was great to see some energy and excitement back on campus. Although this morning, and if you can flip your slide, this view looked a little bit different. We didn't have as many students out there. We had our first snowfall of 2021, and someone had, in a very creative way, had planted a small snow person on top of the fountain there. But if you can flip to my last slide, TJ, this is what I aspire for. This is the Carolina that we all know and love. This was first day of classes in the fall semester of 2019, a long, long line down Cameron Avenue. And I dream that we'll be back in this type of an environment for the fall of 2021. So it's a grand endeavor that we're involved in here at Carolina, and I'm honored to be a part of it. So with that, and I apologize, I know my comments were long today, but we hadn't been together in a while, and I appreciate your patience, but there's an awful lot of good things happening that I want to try to get everybody focused on. And so part of that, the incredible things that are happening here has to do with the work of Dr. Amir Barzan and Dr. Amy Loftus. And they're just going to share a little bit more about the Carolina Together testing program. Dr. Barzan, as you know, spoke with you at our last meeting. He's an assistant professor in the School of Medicine and in the medical, is the medical director of the Family Medicine Center at Chapel Hill and the UNC Urgent Care at the Family Medicine Center at Chapel Hill. Amy Loftus is the medical laboratory supervisor in the Department of Global Health and Infectious Disease. And they have been working tirelessly over these past many weeks to bring the Carolina Together testing program front and center. So I'm going to turn it over to Amir and Amy, and I'm going to thank you for your outstanding work.
Thank you, Chancellor, for those kind comments and kind remarks. And thank you, everyone, for allowing us to come back. And I think that it's really very, very humbling and very kind to hear all the wonderful things that are happening on around the campus. And Amy and I are just glad to be a part of what we're trying to do for the spring semester. Just by quick introduction, last time we spoke, Amy wasn't with me. So I do want to make sure that you guys see her right here, and she's going to give some remarks as well. So as we go through here, I'm going to follow a little bit of the same kind of roadmap that we did last time we talked. And last time we talked about how we had some plans set forward for what the spring semester may look like from our testing program. I'm going to walk a little bit through that same pattern. At the end, I would love to hear any comments, concerns, questions that there may be, and happy to address those as well. So when we first talked last time, we had mentioned how the importance of starting the semester off on a good foot. And Chancellor had just mentioned prior to arrival, what we had come up with was a plan to have students about 5 days before they come to campus to receive a COVID test. And as was mentioned prior, I think one of the things that has started us off on a good foot is the ability to keep, right now at this point, 168 of those students at home, isolating at home before coming to campus. It's not an easy task to review those documents. We have a team that's working very hard on that. A lot of student volunteers that are helping to make sure that those documents are being reviewed appropriately if they're negative, but the campus health team has really stepped up and done an amazing job of notifying those people who say that they're positive of what their correct instructions are and when they could come back to campus. In addition to that, one of the things that we thought was important was to also allow for a really good program to allow for testing inside the dorms whenever we were coming back to campus. So while it's not very easy logistically when you're starting off a program to expand from one site to 8 really quickly, that's exactly what we did that first week that we were having students move in. So at the 7 residential communities that had moved in, we had a station at those facilities to allow for testing before students came into the dorm. So with our turnaround time, we're able to isolate students who, even though they tested prior to arrival negative, we still had positives show up whenever they came back to campus. And we were able to isolate those cases in a very quick manner and hopefully decrease the burden that could have been coming into the dorms. So that got us off, I think, to a reasonable start to start the semester. And now I would like to, if it's okay, just kind of walk through what the Carolina Together testing program looks like in the same format I did before, which is where we start. So right now, with our testing sites, we have 3 locations. There's one at the Student Union, there's one at the current art space, and one at the Rams Rec Center. So distributed across the campus. We have been working with our partners at each one of the sites to continually optimize that. Our very first week that we were open, the week of the 11th, we only were running out of one site. And we did notice that did cause a little bit of a backlog in terms of people waiting in a line. So with quickly expanding to 3 sites, we've been working on also improving a reservation-based system. And I'm proud to report that just last week when we were doing, or this week when we were doing our time trials, we didn't have a line longer than 5 to 10 minutes for people to wait on. And most of the time in the hours throughout the day, that line was actually walk-in and you could go in and not have to wait at all. So continually trying to refine that process and make sure that it's easy to use for students and faculty and staff. And then also making sure that we have more improved signage, traffic flow, and working with our external team that we have to help with wayfinding on the outside. The second step that's really important in this is the amazing work that our IT team and the led by Stephen King, who's one of our faculty members here at UNC, in developing what we call Hall Pass. And so Hall Pass has been an integral part of this. This is where students can log in to register their test, get information about results, see their cadence in terms of how frequently they have to test and what's working, keep them active in terms of reminders. Stephen's team and the IT team has worked tirelessly to integrate this with our electronic medical records so students could get their results. And overall, the reception has been very, very positive. Stephen is a perfectionist to make things work really well. So he is continually optimizing. Just as of this morning, we have a really large kind of slew of rollouts that we're going to try to roll out in the coming week that is now being vetted by one of our groups of student leaders called our clinical operations team for the testing sites to make sure it's user friendly. So we're really happy about the way that that has progressed in terms of making it, again, in another shared experience that's enjoyable for all of those who are involved in the testing program. I did want to highlight the work that is going on in the lab, and that's kind of the next step in this process. So at this point, I'm going to let Amy speak a little bit about the lab and kind of what's going on in the lab and give you the most recent numbers that we've had.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I think as of the 28th of January, we've resulted 22,897 tests. So that's a really big number for a lab that didn't exist until a few weeks ago. And the team is working hard. We're working around the clock to improve efficiencies and also to bring on new staff and fill in some gaps where they've highlighted over the last 2 weeks. And we have actually had a better turnaround time than we expected. We would like to at least make 48 hours. And our turnaround time for the initial week and going forward has been just over 24 hours. So working really hard to make sure that the results get out in time and that activities can downstream from that still be taking place in a really close, near real time process.
And I did want to highlight the work that Amy and one of our lab managers, her name is Olivia Council, have been doing. They've been working around the clock to make sure our staff has been getting the training that they need to be able to operate this lab. And we are so proud of the work that they have done. And they really, truly are behind the scenes doing all this work. And it takes quite a bit amount of work to get this lab resulted. Going to the next step that I think is really wonderful and really important is that, you know, the tests are great and they're only one piece of the puzzle if we can't get the people traced and have the appropriate quarantine and isolation as necessary. So our team members that have been working with Campus Health in Orange County, ensuring that tracing and contacts are followed up on, have been doing a really stellar job of staying on task to make sure that that's happening in a very timely fashion. At the very beginning of the semester, there was a call of a cluster at Carmichael. And just to give you a practical example of what happens in this scenario, that morning, we received a call from the Campus Health team, identified the people who still needed to be tested. We gave them a kit, a cooler that had some of our tests in it. They were at the site in terms of coming to Campus Health, having those people tested. They returned that cooler to us by 5:30, and by 3 o'clock in the morning, so we got the test at 5:30. At 3 o'clock in the morning, we resulted all of the tests from that batch in terms of making sure that those who were close contacts had a test result so that we could quickly quarantine and isolate the appropriate people. So we're really proud to see that that worked out as a reasonably well opportunity for our kind of a stress test that we weren't necessarily knowing that we were going to go through early in the process, but we were happy to see it at work. In terms of housing, that's another point that I think is really important. As of this morning, we had 12 students that were in isolation on campus and 24 that are quarantined on campus. The total for our Carolina community is 130 in isolation and 151 in quarantine. As you may remember, we are doing single room occupancy in our dorms, and we also have quite a bit of flexibility in quarantine and isolation rooms. Currently, we have around 603 rooms that are single room, shared bathrooms that could predominantly be used for isolation, and then 212-ish rooms that are single room, single bath that we could predominantly use for quarantining. Of course, if necessary, you could go up on one side, down on the other, and we still have quite a few buildings that we've kept online that we could bring online if necessary. I think the thing that has made this one of the most enjoyable experiences is talking about the Carolina community and everyone coming together. And that could not have occurred without a doubt, without the help of the students that we have had in the Carolina Student Service Corps. So I just want to bring to attention that in the short period of time that we've been working on this, over 1,500 students have signed up to be volunteers, to be involved somehow in this process, whether it's working on the collection sites, helping in tracing, reaching out to their peers to make sure that they're supported, helping us put together the test kits that we're making. And just in the past 2 weeks have logged over 4,900 hours of community service to the community. That, I think, is just a true testament that everyone is working and making sure that this community is supported, appreciated, and we're working together to be part of the solution. And I wanted to close just by bringing to attention, just again, just a great amount of appreciation that we have for everyone for allowing us this opportunity to, one, talk to you today, but having the trust and support in us to make sure that we're getting off on the right foot, and also allowing us to be able to take this program to the next level in terms of saying, we're happy with the way things started. It does not mean that we're content with where we are. We're going to continually adapt. We're going to continually change to make the process better and smoother for everyone, and expand the capacity that we have to ensure that Carolinians in our community, and especially the university at large, are protected and safe, and working together to ensure that we can have as productive of a semester as possible on our campus. So with that, I'm more than happy to take any questions and walk through anything that may need more clarification, or to hear any comments that the board has.
Well, first of all, thank you both so much, and your team, for all you're doing for the university in your testing program. It's extraordinary. It's just impressive what you're doing. So thank you, thank you. Any questions, comments from members of the board? I think you've,
Looks like Bob had a question.
Bob?
I just had a comment. First of all, I'd just like to reemphasize to thank Amir and Amy. The job that they have done is incredible. And I know that we've been talking about fiscal responsibility and wanting to make sure that we do everything that we can to save resource along the way. And COVID has certainly added, to some of our financial challenges. But the fact that Amy and Amir have been able to stand up this laboratory is saving this university a tremendous amount of money. When we were going out on the market, we were having to devote somewhere in the neighborhood of $90 to $100 per test. And now the cost of the test, because of the great work that Amir, Amy, and so many other people have done, that brings the cost down to about $30 per test. And so when you start talking about 20, 30, 40,000 tests in a month, you can begin to appreciate the magnitude of the savings that they're bringing to this university.
Thank you, Bob.
Mr.
Thank you all again for what you're doing. Chancellor, thank you for bringing, I'm sorry, we had a question from
Chairman, Trustee Bullock. I just have a quick question for Dr. Barzan. Just wanted to see if you could speak to the long-term sustainability of the lab, potentially long-term, assuming that we exit the ongoing pandemic that we're currently presented with.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and I appreciate that. I think one of the things that we were very mindful of in trying to figure out is we understand the constraints that we're operating in now, but what do we want to do in the long term, and how do we go about making sure that what we're investing in is useful over the course of the perpetuity of the university? So one of the things that we wanted to do when we were looking at instruments, supplies, et cetera, is see what we could use that could be potentially transported to other labs if we necessarily need to do that. There is a lot of emerging science work that's done in high throughput PCR. This could be a great lab for a future high target faculty member to take over if we had to get to that point. But we do have a lot of the instruments that are being utilized are utilized by people doing research actively on this campus at this point. In terms of where we are with the virus, the nice thing about where we're set up is that we have some flexibility and wiggle room that if we needed to stay longer in the space because we needed to continue the active testing program, we could do so. And so that's one of the other things that's been nice about the partnership that we've worked through with all of the people involved in the process. So we really are trying to make sure that what we're doing is good for now, but better for the future.
Amir, if you could, anything with regard to the variant and the ability to, through this to evaluate that and the potential of it here locally?
Yeah, thank you for that question as well. So one of the things that's been nice about this is also having a larger community that we could work with. So we have some really great researchers on this campus that do a lot of gene sequencing. And we are in active conversations with them. I think that one of the things that's difficult that maybe the United States hasn't done quite as well as other nations is that gene sequencing is not necessarily done easily on just an instrument. It's actually sent off and kind of evaluated a little bit deeper. Right now, there aren't a lot of places where you could do that very easily. We want to partner with our researchers on this campus to be able to do that. So we're working actively on those conversations. There has been, with our partners in the machinery that we have with Thermo Fisher, there's been a lot of discussion that on how we can work with them to see if that there's a desire to send that off to the state lab. A little bit of the preliminary discussion has been that especially for the variant out of the UK, that this test is actually a good test to start an early detection of it. And so again, now there's emerging strains from Brazil, from South Africa. And so we do want to continue the process going down the line of knowing where we are with sequencing. And we're working actively with at least 3 of our researchers here on campus to see if we could do that.
Thank you. Appreciate all the hard work.
Very much so. Thank you both so much and your team. Please send to them our appreciation as well.
Well, thank you guys so much. And if it's okay with y'all, we will exit the stage to get back to work.
Thank you. And Chancellor, thank you for your comments to us. As you and I were talking the other night, we sometimes get distracted with what may be minutia, but there's so many wonderful, incredible things going on this campus every single day. And those we need to celebrate and applaud. And thank you for bringing so many of them to our attention. You could go on, I know, for a lot longer with so many things that are going on, but thank you for highlighting those today.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to our committee reports. I want to thank you to the members and staff and the chairs especially for your timely work this morning. Zoom is not the best means of having these meetings, but we got it done. You all got it done. So let's now turn to Vice Chair Trustee Davis for the report of the External Relations Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Today's meeting, we had a communications update by Vice Chancellor Joel Curran, where he discussed the ever-changing needs of the communications group here at our university and informed us that it is now almost 100 years old. A very informative update from Vice Chancellor Curran. We also had an update on public affairs from Vice Chancellor Summers, where he provided an update on both possible state funding and federal funding and the important work that he is doing alongside the UNC system and Board of Governors in advocating for us with the General Assembly and with Congress. Chairman, I do have 3 items to take up in closed session. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for reporting. Any questions for Chair Davis? If not, let's move to Chair Cochran and the report of the Finance, Infrastructure, and Audit Committee.
Our committee was driven by Nathan Knuffman with a budget discussion. We had no action items. We didn't have any information items. So We're done.
Any questions for Chair Cochran? There was a lot of good information coming out of your committee, Chair Cochran. You're too modest. Good information from our audit team, from Nate. So thank you for that report. And thank you for the work of that committee. Let's turn to University Affairs and Chair Duckett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think I can beat Haywood's report ever. The University Affairs Committee today caught up on some folks that we haven't heard from in a while, and important parts, especially this time from Amy Johnson, the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, and related to many campus initiatives related to students and, importantly, healthcare with students and doing what I call target specific with limited resources care, so that, for people, transfers, minorities, indigenous, all these people to feel like they have a place to go in these tough times and get health care, mental health care. It's a challenge, and I'm very appreciative of the efforts that the Vice Chancellor and her group have put forth. We got a faculty update from Mimi Chapman that included a number of things, but shows immense concern for the faculty, for the university as a whole, and even for the country on some of the crazy times we've been through. We got an employee forum update from Chair Shana Hill, and again, to reiterate just the importance of what the staff and of this university means. This university can't exist without them, and we appreciate what they do. They often take the most risk of all, and oftentimes for the least amount of pay. The Graduate Professional Student Federation update came from Ryan Collins, and one of the best things to come out of that is that hopefully we're going to have a shorter name than the Graduate and Professional Student Federation going forward. But they have a lot of issues to cover that they care about, and it's been a tough year for all students, undergrad and graduate, in dealing with this. And I think the flexibility shown by the administration and students and faculty and staff are applaudable. So I will have a couple of personnel items to cover when we come back to open session from closed session. So that will conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Duckett. Any questions, comments for Chair Duckett? Thank you. There was some really good information coming from those leaders in your committee this morning. Thank you for letting us hear them. Ladies and gentlemen who are watching our meeting, we're now going to entertain a motion to go into closed session. You never know how long those will take. There are several items that are appropriately done in that forum. There may be one item to come out for vote afterwards. But at this point, I'll recognize Teresa Artis-Neal, trustee and secretary of the board, for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board convene in closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, section 143-318.11, subsection A, subsection 1, to prevent the disclosure of privileged information under section 126-22, and also pursuant to section 143-318.11, subsections A2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 9.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second. Cochran seconds.
Cochran seconds. Further discussion, debate on the motion. Hearing none, if you would, Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Artis-Neal, yes. Mr. Bolick?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Kobe?
Yes.
Mr. Cochran?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Duckett?
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mr. McCullen?
Yes.
Mr. Meekins? Mr. Meekins?
Yes.
Mr. Mosley?
Yes.
Mr. Pryor?
Yes.
And Mr. Stevens?
Yes, that's unanimous. So we will be in closed session in just a few minutes. So give the staff a time to take care of the arrangements for that.
I think somebody's.
I see that things are happening, but the camera image hasn't shown up yet. Okay, we're good now. We're back.
Thank you, Rob. We are now back in open session of the Board of Trustees. We do have one item for action coming out of closed session. I recognize Trustee Duckett, Chair of the University Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one item coming out of University Affairs, which is a personnel item for EHRA and non-EHRA matters, and were passed unanimously in committee and come forward to the board for approval.
In the form of a motion from the committee chair, is there a second?
I second.
Second Cochran. Further discussion, debate? If not, if you would, trustee Arsdale, call the roll.
Ms. Ernest Neal, yes. Mr. Bullock,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Kobe,
Yes.
Mr. Cochran,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Duckett,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. McCullen,
Yes.
Mr. Meekins,
Yes.
Mr. Mosley,
Yes.
Mr. Pryor,
Yes.
and Mr. Stevens.
Yes. Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you, trustee Duckett. Is there further business to come before the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Cochran. Is there a second? Second by Brown. Further discussion, debate? If not, if you would, call the roll.
Ms. Ernest Neal, yes. Mr. Bullock,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Kobe,
Yes.
Mr. Cochran,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Duckett,
Yes.
Mrs. Hopkins,
Yes.
Mr. McCullen,
Yes.
Mr. Meekins,
Yes.
Mr. Mosley,